Hi, welcome to the Embassies of Cinema, located at 3479 West Olive Avenue in Burbank, California. We can be reached at 818-563-9886, or you can visit our website at embassiesofcinema.com. I'm Neil Bryant. I'm here to talk to you about the Red Scarlet today. Kind of the baby sister of the Epic. The cameras are really similar in a bunch of ways and really different in a lot of ways, and we're going to kind of briefly go over that. I like to think of the Scarlet in many ways the same way I think about the Epic. The bodies are almost identical. You can see here, that they're basically the same dimensions, same shape. Both bodies are outfitted with an SSD module for shooting on SSD cards. Both cameras right now are currently fitted with a titanium PL mount. The Scarlet can also be fitted with a Canon EOS mount, but right now we just have PL lenses on it. As you can see, the Scarlet's a slightly different color, right? It's a light gray, and sometimes on set, when we're working quickly, that's like the only way to distinguish the bodies because they're so similar to each other. I think, if you want to shoot Red or Epic, but it may be not quite in the budget, I think the Scarlet is the perfect solution for several reasons. The first one being the sensor is the same. So you have access to almost the same resolution. The Scarlet shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second. The Epic shoots 5K. So it's a great B camera to the Epic, or it's geared up to shoot a feature film all on its own. You have access to the same dynamic range. You have 13 stops of native latitude, or up to 18 stops with Red's new high dynamic range technology called HDRX. So the main thing that Red was able to do to keep the cost down on the Scarlet and set it apart from the Epic is data rates. So you have 4K up to 30 frames. You can go down to 3K and get 48 frames per second. You can go to 2K and get 60 frames per second. And like I said, this is the key difference between the two cameras, is just the amount of frames you can get and the data rate. The Epic is much more of a heavy hitter in that regard, and that's why it's much more expensive. So now that we've talked about the differences between the Epic and the Scarlet, I'd like to take a minute to focus on the Scarlet in particular. I'm going to power the camera up. I just push the power button. Let me get this Epic out of the way. So you can see just like that, the camera's already powered up, which to me is a really cool improvement over the Red 1 MX, because you could see it was like 90-second startup time. With this camera, it's very easy to power cycle, change batteries without delaying production at all. The menu system is really, really easy, very, very interactive. It's all touchscreen. Up top, you have all of your metadata and resolution controls. Like I said, everything's touchscreen. It's very easy to select something and just slide back and forth. So here you have the frame rate you're shooting at, the ISO that you're rating the sensor at, shutter, white balance, resolution, and compression. ISO is very easy to go in and change right here. If you get into a darker situation and you need to push the sensor, it's great. White balance, right now we're in tungsten, but it's really simple to slide over here to daylight or higher if you need. Right now we're in 4K. If you need to access HDRX, or if you want to shoot at a higher frame rate, it's very simple to do. You can bump down to 3K and then go over here to our frame rate and crank it up to 48 frames per second. So you can see down here we have time code running, and then there's a little display here that says Verispeed. That's just to remind you that you're at a different frame rate than SoundSync 24. So here if we go back to 24 frames per second, that Verispeed will disappear, and suddenly you'll see all of your audio readouts come back. So let me go ahead and take us back to 4K. Great. Over here you have the percentage left on your battery, the percentage left on your media, and then over here, this is one of my favorite things about the camera. It's very easy to use this histogram and these bars to judge exposure. Right now we're sitting at a really nice middle of the road exposure. Our histogram's nice and full, and this bar you see is what tells you how much of your highlights are clipping. This one for shadow. So if we overexpose, you can see that this red starts to raise here, and it'll tell you that more is clipping in your highlights. If you underexpose, you can see your histogram shrink and this bar go way, way, way up, telling you that you're clipping a lot in the dark portions of the image. So it's really easy to just take your iris and dial it and come to a compromise in a scene like this where you have a lot of contrast. We've got bright windows outside with full daylight, and we have shadowy portions here in this cabinet. So this is a really good example of on-set monitoring and how you can use a tool like this to judge exposure. Also, you have a false color system that will give you all sorts of readouts on middle gray, flesh tone, and overexposure. Here we have a readout of the clip and the roll that the camera is currently shooting. You see B006, that means this has been designated the B camera, and this is the 6th roll. And then C011, it just means clip 11. And every time you roll, it'll create a new clip, which is very easy for editing. One thing you may have noticed is that when I roll, the camera gets very quiet. And that's a setting that you can actually change in the menus. You can control your fan speed when the camera's rolling or when it's not rolling. And then one thing I really wanted to go over is the playback system. We can shoot a clip. Okay. Cut. So you just push that little play button and it takes you into the playback system. You can push play. You can click this and actually control the speed at which it plays back. You can pause and actually use this to scrub between just by swiping your finger. And one thing I really think is remarkable about the playback system is you're able to actually change your metadata within the playback. So if you're playing this back for your director and you actually want to see what the scene would look like maybe with a colder white balance, you can just change it in here and it will actually affect what you're seeing in playback. Okay, so back in our settings menu, you can actually go into look, and if you want, go in here to color, gain. You can even apply like custom user curves if you want. Now, the camera shoots raw, but right now what we're seeing is actually a display called Red Gamma 2. But if you want to see what the camera is actually recording, there's a raw setting available, and there's also another gamma space called Red Log Film, which gives you a very flat log sort of look. So if you're used to shooting in that style, it's ready and available to you there. And just like that, we can switch back and we can shoot at any time. It's also worth mentioning that if you have a red mode, you can do everything I've done here remotely. So let's power up our red mode here and have a look. You can turn it on. It'll take just a few minutes to boot up. And as you can see, it pairs with the camera. So everything I showed you here on the touchscreen, you can actually do with this red mode. And I'll hold it side by side, and you can actually see I can go into resolution, change it, and there it is, instantly updated on the camera. Let's go ahead and bump up our frame rate to 60 frames. And while we're at it, we can roll and then cut. So it's a great tool to have remotely, like I said, if you're shooting handheld or Steadicam or jib, anything like that where the assistant can't be right with the camera. If the DP needs any kind of settings changed, you can do it instantaneously without ever getting close to the camera. Another cool bonus is if you don't have access to a touchscreen, like you're using the older monitors for the Red 1 or even a third-party monitor, this is all you need to control the camera. And you can actually mount it here on the back and leave it there if you want and have access to all the same controls. Embassies of Cinema is introducing the Scarlet at a rate of $450 per day based on a 3-day week. That'll get you an SSD card, a battery with a battery mount, and a touch screen. Basically everything you need to get rolling. You just have to add a lens package, follow focus, matte box, whatever accessories you need. The great thing about the modular design of the Scarlet is your accessories can be scaled up or down. We can come up with different power solutions, whatever you need to get your show going. And obviously if you add more days, depending on what accessories you rent, there's certain discounts and different rates that can be worked out. So as I said before, it's $450 per day based on a 3-day week, but it's 1 day of rental for a full weekend. So if you come in and pick up the camera after 12 on Friday and return it before 12 on Monday, that's only 1 day of rental. I want to thank you for tuning in to embassiesofcinema.com. Thank you so much and have a good shoot.